Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Good
Good
afternoon.
afternoon.
Yeah. So my name is Madonna Wahiri, and I'm a social worker. I welcome you all to this conference, which has been organized by the Igbo community in Chelmsford, Igbo Community Development in Chelmsford, United Kingdom. So my colleague here is also a social worker. Her name is Margaret Njoroge. She's a child protection social worker. So we have organized this to as a way of educating people, the Africans in the diaspora. Diaspora, those are living in the United Kingdom, to give them an understanding of a little bit of understanding of how the British child protection system works. My colleague Margaret will be co-joining, co-presenting this. So we are going to be looking into a lot of aspects as it pertains to safeguarding domestic violence, looking at gangs, impact of domestic violence on children and young people and family. So we have put some clips together that we'll be looking at, but because the subjects are very vast, covering everything, we're giving you examples, and feel free to ask questions as we move along. This is going to be an interactive conference. So I'll start by explaining what the British system in terms of child protection and child welfare system. We work under the principles and the legislation using the Children Act 1989. It's a guidance that we use in the UK, and I think every country has their own guidance and procedures that they use, which stipulates that every child living in the United Kingdom, England, and Wales are to be protected. They have the right to family life, they have the right to education, they have the right to economy. There are about 5 principles: economic well-being, safety, health, and living in a good environment. So to be very specific, today we're looking at domestic abuse and the wider impact on children's well-being and family members. So the first slide is about the definition. What is domestic abuse? If you ask ourselves, there has been a lot of misconception about what constitutes domestic abuse or what domestic abuse is. So domestic abuse is any kind of controlling or coercive behavior, which includes bullying, threatening, violence, or whatever other behaviors, physical abuse, economic abuse, emotional, sexual abuse, neglect, including self-neglect, acts of omission. We're looking at all that together. Financial or material or economic abuse, they all come under the same category. Discriminatory, when you discriminate against somebody, no matter what it is an abuse. Organizational abuse as well. This also pertains to the adults, people who work under the adult services. Modern day slavery, trafficking, forced labor, and sexual exploitation. All these they're very wide. When we start there, it's a very wide scope. We start looking at them one at a time. We'll be focusing on how each of these abuse impact on the welfare of a child, of your child, of our children. Okay, I need to go back and touch on emotional abuse. because this is emotional abuse is very, and psychological abuse is something that we look at and say, no, I'm not abusing my child. There's no abuse there. So the examples of this, we talked about the yelling aspect, which is when you yell about on a child, physical abuse, you yell, that's the child sees that, the child frightens emotionally, it impacts on that child. And there's so many ways that abuse on you and your wife, we're talking about couples now, where a situation where a couple live together and there are children who live in your environment, when there is that connection, that contact, the constant and repetitive aspect of a husband and wife screaming at each other, shouting at all times, throwing objects, there is a child who is sitting in a corner, listening, watching, shutting their doors and closing their, screaming themselves and sleeping, crying and sleeping out of fear. So those are the ways that this impact. And we might think that there are no effects. They all have very adverse effect on your children. We'll look at all those as we work on the slides. Some of the research studies show that children who witness domestic violence are 6 times more likely to commit suicide, and then 50 times more likely to abuse drugs and alcohol. So imagine 6 times more likely to commit suicide. And these are all the impacts of a child witnessing parental domestic abuse in the home, and they go unnoticed. So that child lives an isolated life, goes on pretending as though nothing happened, because they've really hidden so much, they witness a lot. And for that child to have gone to this extent of committing suicide, you can imagine the impact on the child's emotional well-being, physical and emotional well-being. 50 times more likely to abuse drugs and alcohol. Most homes that there have been evidence of domestic abuse, these are 50 times more likely. We're not saying that every child that witnessed that. Most children, they survive. They just survive out of, perchance. They just want to just get on with their lives. They're 74 times more likely to commit violent crimes against others. And this also includes attacking other children, bullying others, because that's what they've witnessed. Because a child lives in an environment where they're copying, they're mimicking what their parents are doing. So they go out and they fight. They get into fights with their mates. Explanation. Okay, so here we're talking about reasons for gang and knife crime. There have been loads of death-related cases where they are all drug-related and gun, knife, and gang. So here, I think I need to leave this aspect. Maggie, you need to pick this up when you get to criminal exploitation about the gang. So we won't talk more on this for now. So in the year ending March 2023, there were around 50,500 offenses involving sharp objects in England and Wales. This is excluding Devon and Cornwall areas. So the statistics, the research says that's 4.7% higher than in 2021 and 2021 to 22, but 7% lower than in 2019 and 2020. This statistics came from the Commons Library of the Parliament. So we now look at the forms of abuse witnessed by children. Some of you will resonate with this when we mention all this. Shouting, we mentioned that before, threats, yelling, screaming, throwing of objects, chronic, arguments happening in your own home. You think that if a child of 5 years old or 3 years old will not witness that, will not understand. I've worked with children who, this child, he was 6 years old and went to who had reported about the child's behavior. And I went in to do an assessment. And what that child said, he demonstrated, he said, I can't, Auntie, Madonna, I can't sleep. I can't sleep at night. Dad and mom always scream, and I'm always like shouting, closing my ears like that, and I can't sleep. And that alone was, and plus obviously, plus other situations, evidence that we gathered for our court report. That was the reason why we removed this child from the parents' home. And the parents were, because obviously the parents were of the ethnic minority, they didn't believe. Each time I went into the home to warn them, is it that mom left the house, because this was a situation where mom and her parents were always arguing in the presence of the child. And this that went on and on and on. We went to court. The parents were like, no, that can happen. That kind of self-denial that, and they didn't believe that the local authority could actually go to the extent of removing their child from home. And it broke their heart that they were not able to complete all the actions from the court that we asked them to complete, terms of domestic violence course, courses on, awareness of the different things and traumatic abuse that the woman herself, mom, went through. And she was sent to so many courses that she did not complete. So those evidences were all gathered together against the family. And based on that, this child was removed from the family. So into safety, a place of safety, and he was only returned after a year when the parents consistently, completed all the actions and trainings and courses and psychological. You can't believe what this exposes families into. When the social worker comes into your home, we social workers, we pry. Well, I wouldn't say we pry. We dive into your family history, even to your maternal and paternal family, to understand why certain behaviors exist in that family, and why a child could not be kept safe in a family. So calling of names, intimidation, threats of suicide or murder, threats involving weapons of serious bodily harm. So this is again about physical abuse. When a child, social worker notices an abuse on a child, one of my visits to a home, also, a child demonstrated how mom was so aggressive, and she pulled out a standing mirror and threw it at the father. So the child narrowly, dodged it, and he demonstrated to me, said, "Oh, Madonna, come to the kitchen. Let me show what mom did." And then mom broke all the kitchen utensils. So all these evidences are gathered to court. This is another occasion. So when we talk about domestic abuse, we are not only talking about abuse against women perpetrated by men. We are also looking at abuse perpetrated by women. Because when you go out there, you will really be surprised to see a huge element of women abusing men, verbally and physically. It's so huge. And these are things that children witness. So, and then the woman calling the husband idiots, you stupid man, you silly man. And children will come back to school and report this back to educate, to their class teachers. Oh, mommy called dad this. Mommy was shouting at daddy. Oh, mommy is not a good woman. I think mommy doesn't love daddy. Oh, mommy says she will divorce daddy. Oh, daddy said, Daddy said, mommy said. So, and that plays on the child's mind all the time. And what happens is the child will start the impact will be low academic attainment and different aspect of behavior, withdrawal from school, and other elements. How are children affected? So this is how the children are affected. Margaret, the physical aspect of it, I need you to, probably step in and then give some examples of, how they, in our assessment, because Margaret works with the assessment and referral. So the assessment and referral is the first part of the first gate. We call it the entrance.
Hello?
The entrance where
the front door
of social services. Sorry, I'm gonna mute.
There's somebody in a telephone conversation.
Let me. Sorry, I don't even know who. So I'm gonna. Oh, yeah. Okay, so I've muted him. Okay, so so Margaret will now step in and give us some examples of some of the cases that she's worked in, and because when we come into social care, social services, there's the front door, which is assessment and referral. The kind of referrals that we get from even from Africa, we are putting it generally under the African. Margaret is from Kenya. She's from East Africa, so I've brought her in to give us a perspective of her own involvement in child protection and what our own Nigerian men, what happens with that own Nigerian families. I won't say Nigerian men, sorry, Nigerian families, African families in general, in particular, the appalling situations within the system by our own men, our own families here. Okay, Margaret, over to you.
Okay, thank you. So contrary to maybe what majority of people think, social workers or social services is not set out to go and remove children from their families. One of the main principles in the Children Act 1989 is that children are best brought up within their families. So we work on that principle. However, sometimes there will be situations. Madonna, you've just...
Oh, no, I'm going to say, sorry.
Okay. So sometimes there'll be situations where children cannot remain with their families, and not just because of domestic abuse, maybe other factors. But because we are focusing on the domestic abuse, I'll just say that having worked as a social worker for many years, when sometimes I work with ethnic minority families, and particularly African families like I am, I see a lot of maybe lack of understanding of what is classified as domestic abuse in this country. And I see a lot of normalization because obviously where we come from, culturally, sometimes we think domestic violence is okay, or maybe we have that entrenched so much in our culture that we've just grown up to think it's okay. Some examples of families I've worked with from the African background is, for example, I was talking to Madonna earlier. I worked with this family. They don't have any understanding of why you're involved. So rather than calming things down and kind of working through whatever difficulties there are, they actually escalate the situation, because they might even come to child protection conference and start arguing right in front of the child protection conference chair. And child protection is the highest kind of plan we go through before we start thinking about seeking legal advice for a child not to remain in that home. But that is where you need to be working on the actions that need to happen, or where you need to make improvements and make positive change so things stop escalating. But you see it happening right in front of people. So in regards to domestic abuse and the impact on the children, I would say it's a very isolating situation for children, because children suffer from a lot of shame because of what they are witnessing at home. Sometimes they might talk about it. Sometimes they might not be able to talk about it because of how they perceive it. It's so embarrassing for them. and they are maybe living with parents who are emotionally unavailable to them. Because when, let's be honest, when two partners are involved in a lot of difficulties, a lot of relationship problems, it's very difficult to be emotionally available. You can't just switch being available to your child. So that would come under emotional neglect, because you're too busy having problems and having rows and arguments to think about the welfare of the children and how you are affecting them. It's also the children normalizing abuse, and sometimes they think it's normal. They also start getting violent, and because of all the frustration they have, that could come out as anger. They go to school and the teachers are calling, or we can't manage this child's behavior, or this child is hitting other children, or this child is throwing the tables up and down. So all that can come out that way in behavior difficulties. And sometimes, sadly, we've had physical harm on children, which is quite serious. They end up in hospital. And unfortunately, sometimes it's fatal. We've had babies die because somebody got very angry, just slapped whoever was holding the baby, and the baby flew in the air and fell down. We got also, I was talking to Madonna earlier about the coercive control, which has come under the law of domestic abuse. Coercive control came into the law in 2015. And that's is kind of a pattern of abuse. It doesn't have to be physical, or it doesn't have to be like a one instant of somebody is yelling or shouting, but it's a pattern of control, coerciveness, emotional abuse. All that is now recognized as domestic abuse. So in terms of our communities, our African communities, I would say, I think mainly things happen because of lack of understanding. However, sometimes even when we become involved and want to support these families and want to kind of bring that enlightenment to them, there are some barriers, and that could be anything from maybe pride or whatever it is, because some people still struggle with addressing that and wanting to live within the African style while you're living in the UK and need to follow the laws in the UK. Is that what you wanted me to say, Madonna?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Absolutely. Yeah, that's so in a nutshell, that's exactly what happens within, and this lack of understanding. We deal with that so much. I dealt with a case where a mom, it was that referral came about physical chastisement. And physical chastisement, the law says is unlawful when you hit a child and leave a mark on a child. If you use an object to smack your child, it is illegal. But you can smack your child. You can use something. We Africans, we are, we use our palms that leaves marks on the body. We use, wooden instruments, objects. That lack of understanding. There's a way you can speak to your child. Your child will understand. We social workers, we know that most children are very stubborn in their behavior, but that's about that background, what foundation you've set on your child. No child was born to be stubborn. So if there's a behavior that you condone from the beginning, that child will obviously grow up to because you're encouraging, that's encouraging bad behavior. But if you start from earlier on in life to manage a child's behavior, that would be nice, because the school would look at every mark on a child's body, especially babies, children who are in toddler, in nursery, and who are unable to verbalize their views. The schools will come back and look at those marks, especially when they are in the PE ground. So if there's any mark on your child's baby, ensure that you report that, and then have an explanation of how that mark was obtained. Some of them, normally the court, during the assessment process, we could close the case, and once we ascertain that the concern is not substantiated. Right. So thank you, Maggie, for that. So we're looking at the other physical effects of domestic abuse in adolescents. So now this aspect is what we are facing in the UK, England and Wales at the moment. So aggressive behavior in your child, when you start observing some of the aggressive behaviors on your child, fighting, kicking, objects, etc. Hyperactive activity. Ask questions. Listen. Look at that child. Why is that child behaving that way? Why is it my child wasn't, did not always behave like this, but why is it suddenly behaving like this? So look at all that. Disobedience, being heady. You send your child on an errand to, rather not go. Poor concentration, academic performance, disturbed sleep, sleep deprivations on young people. So these are all the things. So, but we are going to be looking at gangs later. So I'm just giving. So in terms of psychological, emotional, we put all this together in terms of Center for Disease Control and Prevention. That home, we come into your home. Yeah, so many homes are not well presented. Maggie, this is also where we come in terms of when you visit a home, the presentation of a home are not very good. So we look at the homes where, this is another statistics, where DV occurs between partners, there are 45 to 60% chances of reoccurring of child abuse. So in terms of child abuse, some parents might also transfer that aggression from their partners onto the child. And that becomes a very serious effect as also. And it's 15 times higher than an average home. On the environment, children witness 68% to 80% of domestic assaults, though not physically attacked. Well, domestic and emotional abuse are the most significant. And this is something that us as parents, as family members, we need to be very careful about. Living in a domestic violence environment takes its toll on children in various ways. We will look at those ways in a moment. So nature versus nurture. A child's environment can have both positive and negative impact on their mental health, physical, and general well-being. If you look at some children who are nurtured in a loving and caring environment, they thrive. They dress well. The atmosphere. Even us as adults, if you look at yourself, wake up in the morning, for example, you look at your behavior, your mood changes. Something must have triggered your changes in behavior or presentation. And someone might ask you when you get to work and ask, are you okay today? You're such in high spirits. What happened? So that reflects on that child. It also reflects on adults. It's okay. So this kind of atmosphere behaviors can also last into childhood, whether negative or positive. So they carry every behavior, whatever that has been there is now being transferred to their adulthood. The role of interpersonal relationship in forging key connections in the brain. So there's that connection, the connectivity of every emotional abuse perpetrated or witnessed by a child in their chemical brain, the way the brain functions. There's a research about this development on brain and mind development. It's the book Siegel 2004. It talks about the mind developing as a brain response to ongoing experiences. A child of 3 years old, I'm using a child of 3 years old, or even 2, 3. Let's use that. Would respond to every environmental aspect of their life, physical, emotional, joy, love, cuddles, attachment, all those things. They will respond to it, and that will form part of their ongoing life experiences. I also recall, things that happened when I was young. My siblings and I, sometimes we sit together and we kind of remember have kind of reminiscence over what our parents, what we did when we were young, the places of interest we used to go to. And when we remember, that kind of excites us so much. Imagine a child that had no of this recollection, no positive recollections at all. Everything the child knows is mom and dad fighting all the time at home. Imagine a child living in such a chaotic home environment. It's only when you go out, go into family homes, see we're quite, I wouldn't say we're fortunate. The line of our job exposes us so much to various elements, family dynamics is really worrying when when we come into family homes and see what goes in there. Early childhood experience impact on the adolescent and childhood life. So protective factors, children's protective factors. What are these? You communicate with your child. The child finds that protection. Communication is the key. Within our African families, ethnic minorities, we tend to hush the children away. Oh, just wait, mommy is tired, mommy is talking now. But your child needs your attention. She needs to communicate with you, because in the UK system, if you look at children who are born here, they learn to talk, they teach them how to communicate well, they teach them how to interact, and them how to, externalize their feelings. They talk about feelings. How do you feel today, darling? Oh, mom, I'm feeling, no, I don't feel so well. Mom, I'm feeling sad. We have the smiley, and that's what we use on our direct work. You have the smiley face, the sad face, the not so good face, and a child will explain to us why they are not feeling not so good, why they're feeling sad. So we have all that, emojis that we see now on our phones, we use on other phones. So we take those to our home visits and ask this child, or school visits. These children will now explain to us how they feel. Listening to your children is very paramount, very important. When a child speaks, please, I beg you, it's important to listen to that child, no matter the age. There is nothing that will make you to be too busy not to spend a moment of your 24 hours time to spend with your children. How do we think these children who are in Oxford and Cambridge and those Eton schools are thriving? Because they have time with their parents. But what we find out that majority of our parents, of our families, when they come to the UK, is a different case. Margaret, do you want to come in and give examples of this? Thank you.
I like the way you keep calling me in. No, there are just two things maybe I want to mention before I give any examples.
Yeah.
I just wanted to highlight that domestic abuse, children witnessing either by hearing or seeing, that is under the law. The Adoption and Children Act, is it 2002? So that's why it's a criminal offense in this country, because I get a lot of families I work with asking me, we can have an argument, me and my wife, it's our relationship. And I say, that's under the law in this country. It's a criminal offense to expose children to domestic abuse. There are also situations where I hear, oh, every couple argues, or when you're in a relationship, there'll be arguments. And I say, yes, mine is not perfect either. But what there is when they sustained this level of behavior, then that becomes very harmful to both you as a couple and to the children as well, because it takes away the joy of being a family and now start the child protection system, kind of sequence. So Madonna, you want me to give an example of that availability of the parents, because that is very important. If you're available, you'll have that chance to talk to your children, even if it's for just 10 minutes after they come back from school. Just try and find out, how was your day? What happened? What did you do? It's just those normal things like that. And that child feel listened to, because if they're having a bad day at school, that's the opportunity for them to say, oh, so-and-so was speaking on me, or this and this happened, or I was feeling a bit sad because this happened. And they also feel important. They feel valued. You know, my mom and my dad can make, or, you know, whoever is parenting me can make time to listen to me. I know we you know, I always use this example, and sadly I'm going to use it again. We have, at the minute, I think in the last maybe 1 year or so, we've had a lot of families move from Africa on the sponsorship visa, what is it called? COS visas. And unfortunately, those families are not able to access any benefits in this country. So whatever you do, you're going to have to pay your way through this country without any help from the government. So what I have noticed, because I've worked with a few of them, and it's not all of them who are going through this, it's some of them, but I've come across this quite a bit in the last few months. When both parents come here, maybe they were doing totally different jobs when they came from Africa, when they're in Africa, and they come and start doing jobs maybe which are not very enjoyable, and jobs that you need to put in a lot of hours for you to be able to meet the lifestyle here, or kind of even pay the bills, to be fair. It's not like they want big lifestyles. But what then happens is that the children kind of get lost in there. And I empathize, because I know we have to pay bills in this country. And if you cannot access any extra money besides what you're earning, that can be quite difficult. Then the children start displaying some behaviors at school. And that's where we come in. We get called at school, or you get so frustrated, you're so tired, you're working night shift, day shift, whatever time God gives you to be able to kind of just even sustain the normal living style. And we come in, and that makes, as much as we are a service that would want to be seen as supporting and also safeguarding the children, we come in and that brings more stress in that family. And that's because of the way things are going within that family. There's no way we can help it. However, when we come in, and I'll talk on my behalf, when I work with families, I try first to listen to what's going on. So we try and unpick what's happening. But if I've come in and the children have said this, and you're trying to be very defensive, you go to school, you're called for a meeting, and you start shouting in there, that becomes really challenging even for me to try and work around a safety plan for these children and try and help this family from, my perspective as an African or an immigrant person in this country, and also as a social worker who has to also be professional. Because when you start that behavior, then the schools will start asking, and you're telling us the safety plan will work with these parents. You're sending this child back home to this person. So I'll give an example of a dad who I went to meet at the school. Mom was already there. I was talking to her, and he arrived. And rather than trying to understand what the child had said or trying to reassure him, he started telling him off in front of the teachers. And here I am saying, oh, we are going to devise a safety plan. This child can go home. I'm going to see them tomorrow. Just check in with him and see how things are. Because I'd already worked that with the mom. But dad come and stand in front of everybody, including other parents, and start telling off the child. You're just kind of confirming what they are worried about. So there's violence at home, or this is the allegations that have been made, and you're just trying to confirm that. So in that case, for me, I look at it as, obviously you have your ego, you want to, challenge, like you challenge. Children are maybe supposed to listen all the time, or that's the belief, but you also making a bad situation worse, because then you're kind of showing whatever the child reported is actually true. And I'm not saying it's not true, but I also believe that people can change. And that's why we live and learn. What we know now is not what I knew 10 years ago, 20 years ago, whenever time I came here. So you live and learn. And I think for us, even doing this kind of a workshop, I think is helping people also understand and learn where you might come into contact with services in this country. And unfortunately, when we create a contact for your child on our system, that lasts for 75 years. And whether their children come to the attention of social services in future, that will still be there. So it's a history, and which I say is not a positive history to create if we can avoid it.
Thank you so much. So we're going to just quickly rush through the slides and then come to the other important aspects. of faith. So we look at the
Do you think people need to ask questions if they have any
at
burning
this point,
questions?
at
Because
this
we are
point,
just talking, the two of us.
I
Yeah.
know. So that came to my thought as well. Has anyone has any question to ask? Because at the beginning we said this is going to be interactive. Any questions so far? Anything you're confused about, or because I had people who had called me previously to ask about police turning up in their homes, at their homes unannounced, and a social worker, what should they do? So you have anything? Anybody has anything to add? Okay, if you whilst we are going on, if you have any, just raise your hand and they will just give us a hands up, or just raise your hands on using the three dots there. Okay. So domestic violence, the impact on boys and girls, childhood experiences also shape the way we parent. So when we look at the way we parent, we've worked with parents who had very poor parenting themselves. They've also come out from very poor family backgrounds, and they had not resolved those kind of issues within their own family backgrounds. And then they got married and they transferred that into their own marriage. They have not, their parents have not brought them up well, their moms have not brought them up well. They haven't got a very positive, upbringing, if I could just, use that language. And then therefore they cannot hand in or hand down to their children what they do not have. So boys also exhibit more externalized behaviors. They kind of lack emotions and withdrawals. So in that way, remember that when children witness domestic violence, the impact on a boy is different from the way it impacts on girls. So this is disparity here. For boys, they could go out and play football, they could join gangs, they could, befriend, older boys, they could become aggressive, they fight. For girls, what girls do, okay, we'll finish with us. There's this particular saying that goes like, men do not share emotions, or men don't cry. I don't know whether any man here has cried before. Is there any man here that want to say that they have shedded tears before? I don't know. Men here, do you want to tell us how you share your emotions? Is this saying right? I'm not a man, so for us girls, we cry very easily, isn't it? If anything happens, just boom, we shed tears, and somehow we kind of, everything goes off. So later on in life, they kind of express the emotions by engaging in fights. We talked about that substance misuse. This is a very huge one, that smoking, drugs, and gang crimes and everything. So the substance misuse is quite imperative on both girls and boys. Seeking safe haven with peers, they seek out for friendship with older men, older boys, forming unsafe relationships. For girls, girls will later go on and parent poorly. This is the impact about poor parenting, the way they are shaped from their childhood. Girls internalize the emotions as well, because sometimes they'll just start doing they could talk to somebody, but if they are unable to talk to somebody, they'll just go on to look for internet, go to social media to seek friendship there, and they withdraw from social connections. Then the things like depression, issues like depressions will come in, and they are more susceptible to self-harming. And what would young girls have self-harmed seriously, and they'll start expressing suicidal ideations in that way, because they've been so angry. A young girl who so much witnessed mom's sexual, this is moms now, mom who uses her home as a home where she welcomes men. because mom was a single parent. So this child witnessed that. And because she witnessed mom coming in with different men, and those men will hit at mom, mom will start smashing up objects at home. So she, at the age of 14, started dating older men. When she did, that's where we have the victims of sexual exploitation and they're self-harming. So the next behavior will be trashing of objects. When I asked her, she said, that's what mom does. That's what mom does. That's what mom does. Mom still will do it now when she's the one does. You know, mom will still use it. So what? I witnessed mom doing that. And that's the only way she could express her anger and her frustration. So engaging in sexualized behaviors as teenagers, so they start behaving in very sexualized way. At the victims of sexual exploitation, this is going to be another topic we're going to be taking on. Sexual exploitation is huge. Sexual exploitation, child, CSC is called child sexual exploitation. It's very huge. Where you're 15-year-old, 13, as early as 13, 14, I work with young people as early as 14, 13, 14, who have been groomed by older men, you know, and they send them to hotels to do so many things. Well, these girls, because some of them are in care. When your child is placed in care, what tends to happen is they lose their boundaries, and then they go into different behaviors. Okay, so I've kind of touched on this a little bit about parenting from inside out, how your parenting shapes the way you parent. Then look at how a deeper self-understanding can help you raise children who thrive. This is Segel 2005. And there are questions around how many parents find themselves thinking, I can't believe I've just said this to my child. The very thing my parents used to say to me. That is repeating mistakes of your parent. This is a domestic abuse. This is emotional abuse, calling your child names. And that's the same thing that is repeating. As I'm saying this is quite, it kind of, I've seen parents who say that's what their parent used to say to them. That somehow they cannot withdraw because that's, your parent is your parent. Your mom was your mom. Your dad was your mom. This is your child. There's no reason why we should start replicating that behavior. You know, when you replicate a behavior, that behavior is gonna be like a vicious cycle. What we call a revolving door, cycle of events. It kind of goes on and on and on. With your child wakes up and does the same thing to her own children. So children who witness domestic abuse or parental substance misuse express anxiety and concern about their own security within their own families. Does that make sense? Children tend to devise coping strategies. They start withdrawing. They find their own safe haven. So that's their way of coping. Then when you keep alcohol, they could start drinking. No, and you won't know that alcohol is missing because that drinks also. So they start. I had a child who years ago, when dad would drink, he was only, what was it, 4 years old. Once he hears the sound of the door, he will quickly go to mommy and use a pillow and cover mommy. Mommy, daddy's coming, hide. A 4-year-old boy, mommy, hide, daddy's coming. But dad is just coming in from work. But this is what has resonated in this child's mind, because dad will always drink and pound upon mom. The child that child is now 18. He feels like smacking his dad, punching his dad. He's so traumatized by what he witnessed, and I'm dealing with that issue now. So we have to be very careful on this issue. So now we reflect on your childhood and unresolved trauma. This is an interesting aspect. I just want to give you a few minutes to read through and think about your unresolved trauma. Ours, I'm using the word unresolved trauma, and how it affects us as parents. What can you remember? You are no good. You are fat. You are ugly. You are beautiful. Oh, my parents are fighting all the time or being in a happy home. You are a dummy, an ingrate. So does that resonate? The list is not exhaustive, so I've just put a few things here. There are positive, there are negative, significant things that you can remember, going on holidays with your parents, eating together in a table, at the dinner, smiling, drinking, going to the parks. But then there are so much those unresolved trauma that you have brought into your marriage. Those are the traumas. And then you think that because your dad did not treat your mom well, so you're married, therefore, those things that you witnessed, you're bringing it. I don't want my husband to treat me the same way my father treated my dad. I don't want my wife to treat me the way kind of start playing. And these children are there witnessing that. Do you still think about them? You still think about all those things in your life that you witnessed? Are they relevant? Are they really relevant? Can you just try and wash away, try and forget about them, or talk about them to deal with them? Your husband, both of you as a couple, can deal with those issues. Did you hear words like this? So these are the words that we thought about. Okay, so any questions so far? Okay, that means the conference is going on well. So the feelings, what do you feel? How does that make you feel? All that we've talked about, looked at, or one or two of them. What does it trigger in you when you think of those words, those negative words? Have they made or shaped your childhood, your adulthood? Did they influence who you are today? Or what you are, what you have turned into? Again, Sigel, they spoke about how communication impacts brain development. So think about the need to create the necessary foundation for loving and secure relationship with your children and speaking positive words. So this is the end of the first slide. So we're going to stop here for shortly and give room for questions. At the next 15 minutes, we just run through the other slide. Any questions? Do we have parents in this conference at all?
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. This is Doctor speaking, the chairman.
Oh, hi, Dr. How are you?
Hi, I'm all right. Thank you, Madonna. Thank you. What's your friend's name again? Margaret.
Yeah.
So thanks, Margaret, for the impressive presentation this evening. I'm highly impressed with the presentation so far. But I have just a brief question to ask. Myself, being in psychiatry, I know the impact of abuse on people growing up, and there are so many of them. The impact is so huge that we need to, as parents, to do our best to make sure that such does not come to our family or to our kids. But the question, among all the abuses, physical abuse, some of them can be seen, but the most covert and the most worrisome, the most abuse that causes more impact on the children will be the emotional abuse. And sometimes, as you highlighted, sexual abuse or grooming. How do we watch out for this? And what are the signs that parents can look out to be able to identify when it is happening? or parents or neighbors, or like I would consider all Blacks as family. If you notice such a thing, how you can intervene and advise our friends. So what would be the things to look out for?
Okay, thank you so much. So that takes us to the next slide. Takes us to the next slide. So the next slide that we've prepared, it talks about the criminal child criminal exploitation. And within this presentation, we looked at the grooming process and the signs you have to look out for in your children. Because of the length of this, we'll just run through it very quickly. Criminal exploitation is a form of child abuse where children and young people are manipulated and coerced into committing crimes. This is from the NSPCC website. And how are young people recruited? When it's very clear. When a child, they say through peer pressure, walking alone on the streets, especially at nighttime. But basically, when a child, we've seen children who abscond from home. We say a child is missing, the local authority gets alerts. We have alerts that come up almost every evening. Oh, Madonna, your child is missing. Oh, this child is missing, has been missing for 3-4 days. The child run away from home. Why? The child that finished from school, and at the end of the school, he or she did not want to go back because he feels that going back home will be very stressful for him or her. And rather than going home, he hangs out with his peers in his school uniform or high school uniform, hanging on the streets or shops. And you see them by the corner store or in parks. At the parks, there are so many parks. Some of the East London area, there are some parks that are very, very, is a center for criminal exploitation. And that's where these men go around to pick up vulnerable young people. So now going to the signs that the grooming process is very huge. So they start grooming as early as now I think they've lowered the rate to about the 8 to 10, isn't it? 10, lower the age 10 years old. When a child comes home, or you notice different things around your child, I'll give example for girls and boys as well. These children come in at home, you find new phones, iPad that you haven't bought, new different devices, shoes, trainers, track suits you haven't bought. And then when you ask a child, he tells you or she tells you, oh, my friend gave it to me on my birthday. But that's the normal thing. Oh, my friend gave it to me on my birthday. Then that is a sign of grooming. Another sign is, okay, so when we talk about this grooming, we look at what they groom them into and for. They groom them purposely to run errands, drug errands. So these children, boys and girls, I work with girls who have been given packages. So they use the burner phone, little phone, not the iPhone or any of the Android phones. They use a burner phone. You see your child is using 2 phones, burner phone and a smartphone. So that burner phone is what they use, the drug lords, the masters give them to where the numbers are. And they give them little packages to kind of run drugs, to go and deliver drugs somewhere. They come back, they are given little cash money. This cash amount, maybe 50 pounds to start with. So the next time they say, oh, this is really good. They go. The next time, they say, oh, did you get that? They say, yeah, I think I like it. Is that okay? That's fine. Are you happy? Yes, I'm happy. So that child goes away, comes back the next time. I said, can you go to, so this is also linked with county line as well. So these children are promised, they're promised protection because they cannot get that protection at home. Remember that they are vulnerable, that they haven't gone home from school. And these men are telling them that your parents don't love you. They're telling them that nobody loves you, will protect you. So the child, out of their vulnerability, admits and falls prey of this situation. Because they don't suspect any danger. They are invited to their homes. My 14-year-old at the time absconded from home and went and lived with a 32-year-old male who in his home, they were just randomly picked on the street. She went there and was doing drugs for him, running errands, and of course, other things, sexual exploitation. Of course, when they run errands, to different addresses, those men will also pay them back with sex. So they from the age of 14 until 18, when they turn to adulthood, the local authority washing their hands off. Okay, you now go and live your adult life, but they are all also damaged. So they are promised all these things. For girls, it's very worrying for girls because they are sent to hotels to meet men at hotels, and they come back late at night. When your child returns, keeps late night, what do? You ask questions. Why are you back at this time? When your child is the child locks himself in his or herself in his room, in their room, please, this is your home. Because we are social workers, we have the right, we're given the authority to go into homes, and the child must see you. We must see this child, every child that we go to see. So you as a parent, why don't you have the authority? You think your child has got more power. You knock, oh, dad, don't come in, I'm busy now. And you shut the door and you walk away. Come on. Of course, you're going to respect the child's privacy, but please make sure you have a time when you inspect your child's home, your room, because we are social workers. And if the child is in foster placement or supported accommodation, there are times for inspection of those homes. So why can you inspect your child's room? You need to find out what's going on with your child before it gets late. Does that answer part of your question, Dr. Ima? Or there are other...
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
All right. So then we look at the counter line. The counter line is a system whereby young people are given drugs packages, because sometimes they don't even know what they are carrying. And the reason why young people are given drugs to do the drug run, is because the police will not prosecute young people because they're underage. But I think the law is gradually changing, if gradually now. But the adults are aware that children who are under 18 cannot be, especially the very, very young ones, they can only be cautioned. The 16-year-olds or 17-year-olds, if they are cautioned, they can, they are arrested. I've got some 15, 16-year-olds or 17 who were cautioned and spent their remanded in custody overnight, and then they still come out and start doing what they're doing. We had children who have traveled from London to places like Oxford. I had to go to Oxford. Was it Cambridge I went to from London to see a child who has swallowed drugs. He was only 16, and he was very adamant. He wouldn't talk to the police because he's been groomed. He was protecting his men. They sent him on counter line. So we went all the way to Cambridge to the police custody where he was. And obviously the parents were there waiting for him. He was nowhere to be found. So these are the things that they do from one end of the county to another to deliver drugs. And the police know these children. They're aware of them. They caution. So the element of this is what the police is fighting on. The police have tried to track down these gangs, but it's been very difficult. But for young people, some die in the process. There have been cases of children who have been sent to Africa. When their parents have noticed that, they send them to Africa. The gang members have now, obviously they contributed money and sent to these young people for them to get their flights back in the UK. And upon their return to the UK, the gangs will just kill them off. They've been night stabbing. Someone was killed in Colchester some time ago. The parents sent him to somewhere in Africa. He came back. Whatever happened, he's been to prison. They went to his doorsteps and stabbed him and killed him in the presence of his younger brother. So there are loads of examples. What are the signs? These are the other signs we're talking about. Children coming home late from school, bringing new items home, we said about the expensive clothes, spending more time on their phone. We're not saying listen to your children's conversation because that's their privacy, but make sure that you have that relationship with your child that they can share things with you. Sneaking in and out of the house, making unusual excuses to go out, telling lies, falling behind in their schoolwork, visits from older boys, hanging out with different friends, using bicycles or scooters. But this is another way as well. They use that to run errands. Staying up late at night and arguments over the phone. Okay, Margaret, is there anything you want to say before we go into the knife crime?
Maybe I just wanted to go back to the emotional abuse question.
Okay.
Obviously, will depend on where the emotional abuse is happening. I know grooming is part of the emotional abuse because they are really manipulated and coerced into doing things. There's also emotional abuse that occurs, obviously, when children are exposed to things at home. So the way I would say, you notice the signs of emotional abuse on that child would be you see them withdrawn, they have low self-esteem, they're not communicating, maybe their behaviors have changed in the way they talk to people. There's also difficulties in managing their emotions, so children might just burst out crying for very small things that never used to happen. So I think for me, it's kind of understanding where that emotional abuse is coming from, because it might be coming from within the home environment, or it might be coming from school. We know about bullying. There's a lot of emotional abuse around bullying. So you just have to be aware of where that abuse is coming from. If it's coming from within the house, you see a child start getting very withdrawn, very angry, you have to also start looking at what's going on, because a child who is growing up in a nurturing environment, is likely to be able to talk about anything that is making them sad and, why they are behaving the way they are behaving. But if they feel that, whatever is happening at home, there's a few difficulties happening at home and they're not able to talk about it to anyone, then that will go into, they'll just internalize that. And then that will start eating into them. And you see your child who was healthy mentally and emotionally just start turning into a different kind of a child. But also, like Madonna is saying, grooming as well turns children into that way as well. You see a child start behaving very, very strange. I've worked with children who the parents cannot believe is the same child they had because of what is happening externally, the influences from the gangs, from the groomers. Maybe he has lost somebody's package of drugs. He's really worried. He's being threatened. He's feeling I'm going to be harmed. And all that come into play in terms of their emotions. So it depends on where, the abuse is coming from.
Thank you very much, Margaret. Okay. So we just look at some of the statistics of the knife impact of knife crime, and you know, all the crimes, especially within our Black and African ethnic minorities. So this statistics was from the UK Parliament website. And also it talks about the failings of the youth justice system to, Black children. It said, as a Black child in England and Wales, you are more likely to be stopped and searched, arrested, held on remand, sentenced to custody, and to go on to commit another offense within a year. So I remember that some time ago when in the UK, Black men, young people were worried that they were being searched, stop and search whether they committed a crime or not. Yes, because number one, we're talking earlier, Margaret and I were discussing earlier about how our Black young people dress, but how they dress and when they go out. If you dress like a street boy, because those are the things that the police will not stop a child that is well dressed, clean hair, coat, and but each time you find a child with their hoodies on, those are the ones that the police tend to stop all the time. So presenting yourself, you're making sure that your children are well presented when they go out, the group that they follow. Talked about gangs and if your child is, make sure you're aware of whom your child's friends are, know their parents, and the kind of company your children keep is very important, because you wouldn't want your child to be, the police to be knocking at your door all the time, bringing your child home because they were found with, associated with other people. That there's a crime they call the crime of linked by enterprise, enterprise. So we need to, that's where children are found in a crime scene that they are not even aware of, but they're out of association, they're linked with that crime. So figures show that Black children account for 4% of the 10 to 17 years old population. This census was the data from 2011. 18% of stop and searches were ethnicity, where ethnicity was known was 15% of arrests. Imagine that. So there's always arrests. Mind you that this was since 2011. And another one I'm going to share is about 2023. So 12% of children were cautioned or sentenced. 12% children. When we're talking about children, we're talking about underage, 10 to 17 years old, cautioned. What were they cautioned for? Carrying knives. And mind you that anything about blade or any sharp objects, the police will caution children. Why are you carrying a knife? Why is the need for anybody to carry a knife if that's not for an intent to protect themselves or to kill or to stab? 29% of the youth custody population increased from 18% 10 years ago. Can you imagine, 10 years ago? And now that we're having a lot of people from the diaspora, people from Africa, ethnic minority coming into the country with no understanding of the UK system of child protection, anything at all, child welfare. What I would advise all parents, if you're just coming in from the UK, make sure that you attune yourself to the news, to things that are happening in community, in the area where you live. Listen to the news. It's not about going to work and coming back, but you need to learn about the system that you're in. So statistics are shocking. Imagine, and the disparity continues when we look at reoffending rates, which for Black children is 42.4% as compared to the rate of 35.3% for the white children. See the difference there. So Black children, why we need to ask ourselves, why are Black children reoffending? Why are they doing this? So these are all as a result of poor family background, domestic violence, poor upbringing, parents not being, the absence of fathers, absence of mom. It could be a father who is taking over the care of the children. It could be a mom. So when we are saying we're not generalizing, we're not just saying, women, but we've seen some households where when a dad talks, the mom said, shut up. Leave them, leave the children. He's a child. No, you need to talk. If your husband is the harsh one, allow your husband to discipline the children. By the way, when we say disciplining, it's not, physical or emotional. Anything that would make your child to run away from home. Show love. Love. Every child wants to be shown love. Cuddles, attachment, bonding. When a child loses that child will seek love elsewhere. I work with a child who, this girl she was always seeking relationship with older men. When we asked her, said, oh, I need a father figure. Older men, only 14, 15, from the age of 14 up to when she was 18. All the men she was going on was people in their 30s, 40s. So imagine that. And so damaged a child that now she's gone on to have her own children. The children have been removed from her, still in care. So she was in care, her children were in care. So please, we need to understand the system where we live. The police will come into your home if the neighbors, of course, Margaret, you have to think about where we receive our referrals also. Your neighbors are, the sources of referral. When you think that you're on your own, you're not on your neighbors are seeing. They see, they hear, they listen into your homes. So I want to give us.
Can I give an example which I just
yeah.
said?
Thank you.
Obviously, I worked, it's confidential, but I'm not going to mention any names. I worked with a Nigerian family. I'll quickly give this example. And because you mentioned the neighbor is the one who actually called the police to come to the home. And that's because a visitor had come to the home and the child who is, he's quite young, he's in primary school, was being made to do the Nigerian greeting where you bow down, the child will bow down and you touch their head, isn't it? And the child doesn't like doing that. So the parents haven't bothered to explore why, which obviously might be all different reasons, but there's a reason why he gave me. So the dad became quite aggressive with this child, pushing and forcing him down, pushing, and the neighbor could see through the window because they had it was one of these hot days, they had their back door right open, and the neighbor could see right through. And the child was crying in distress because he didn't want to do it. And obviously, he's kind of opposing dad's rule, and dad is enforcing the rule, and it all became messy. So the police arrived, and that's where I'm going to go with that story. So we became involved. The referral came to us because if the police attend any home where there are children who live there, the referral has to go to social services to kind of assess what's going on there. Whether somebody is going to be arrested or not, we still have to get that referral to see what's happening for the children. And that's how I became involved. So that's a very straightforward, simple thing. I'm not saying a child should not do their cultural greetings because everyone has a right to promote their culture, and that's because that's important to them. If the children want to follow that. But if it is getting to that point where you're almost losing your children, you need to first of all sit down with your children and find out why. Why don't you like to do it? And you tell them what that means to you, and then come to a kind of resolution about how that's going to happen. because he still doesn't want to do it up to now, but you've already now got yourself a criminal record or, you know, a police record, whatever that is. It just kind of went overboard. And the mother was so worried that these children would be taken away from her. She came home from work crying, and I went and said, that's not why I'm here. So we started from there. But that's just an example of how we can become involved for something that you never thought is a child protection matter. But the neighbor was very concerned about this child. So we get referrals from the police, we get referrals from neighbors who call us, we go anonymous referrals. A lot of referrals actually come from school, because I think the children feel more comfortable at school, is their safe place, and they're able to say things there. Other referrals come from our family members who might be concerned about a child living in some situation that we need to become aware of, and, you know, just check what's going on for that child. We get referrals from whatever probation services, and that's because if they know about an adult who is having interactions with certain children and they think this adult is not a safe adult, they might alert us. We also assess unborn children. So, for example, if there's domestic violence or domestic abuse going on in a home, a referral will come from the midwife, and they'll say, this is what the mom has disclosed to me. I need you to check what's happening for this unborn child, because children become affected by domestic abuse from when they are in the womb. Yeah.
Okay. So thank you very much. I think we've really exhausted. Well, I wouldn't say exhausted, but this is our first conference. So we thank you all. Any questions so far? And then anything that anybody things that want to share? Oh, okay. Prof Eugene. Unmute yourself. Thank you. Unmute yourself. We can't hear you. Okay.
That's right. Can you hear me now?
You can, yeah. Thank you.
Sorry, my own is not, sorry, good evening, everyone. My own is not to ask any question. It's to highly commend the two sisters. They have done me wonderful presentation. I've learned a lot, and I thank them for the massive and very impressive, brilliant presentation in trying to educate us. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you so much, Prof.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Any questions or contributions?
Yes, I have a question.
Okay.
Okay, I express my joy for this wonderful presentation. Then my question is, when you notice such behaviors from these children, and you try to, in your own way, to caution them or to know why they are exhibiting such attitude, and they kept on doing it, what do you do? So how will you react? How will you raise it up so that maybe you can get help, and so that the child can stop such behavior on time?
Okay. Margaret, you want to go?
Okay.
Thank
so
you.
Thanks for that question. So what I would say is, every behavior anyone exhibits, whether that's an adult or a child, there's a reason behind it. So I think for me, the most important thing is to talk to that child and try and find out why. And that could be maybe something within the home, could be something outside the home. And also what I would say for me, having worked with, I would say in particular, ethnic minority families that use physical chastisement as a way of instilling discipline. First of all, that doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. You can tell I'm of an age maybe where I experienced that. It doesn't work. It just creates fear and aggression in children and teaches them how to be violent. But there are other strategies. And that's why when we work with parents, sometimes we recommend for them to have to do a parenting program because from that program, that gives you a few strategies. I'm not saying they're 100% foolproof, because some children will always be difficult, but at least it will help you to manage. It will be manageable in a safe way. And you run the strategies of dealing with that particular behavior. For example, when you do a parenting program or a parenting course, you might get one-to-one session that address the specific difficulties you're having at home. Alternatively, even as a social workers, we can do some parenting sessions. I undertake a lot of parenting sessions with families. So you tell me what's going on, and then we try to work with that. And I speak to the child as well. Get to hear, you know, why is this happening? Why are you doing this? What's the matter? What can we do to make things comfortable and better for you? And sometimes listening to your children doesn't mean you're a weak parent. It means that you're actually getting to understand what's affecting them and how you can address that. Because if you don't know what the problem is, it's very difficult to know what to address. It might be a behavior difficulty because of what they're experiencing at school, or maybe something that is going on at home. We don't know. You know, and you also have to think about, you know, the availability. How available are you to kind of know your child that well, that you'll be able to know today they're having a good day, tomorrow they're having maybe a bad day. What is the difference? What has made the difference? So what was happening yesterday that didn't happen today? And I'm not saying this is 100% foolproof, but it will help you manage. There's so many resources. Is it Chioma? There's so many resources that you can access and have a look. And I was actually going to say that at the end. We have an organization called Afruka, which is Safeguarding of Black and African Children organization. And they have a lot of good resources, which I always recommend to our Black and African families. And also the NSPCC website. There's a lot of tips and advice around parenting and managing behavior. And obviously there's Madonna, if nothing works.
Yeah, that's it. There are loads of resources which, you know, we'll add that to the slide as well.
Yeah. Did I answer your question?
Yeah. Chioma, sorry, I muted you because there was noise coming out from me.
Yes, thank you so much.
Do you think that's helpful?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, there are different strategies that children respond to, and different children will have, you know, you'll know your child well, you know what strategy works for them. And sometimes when we talk about praise and reward, it looks very kind of superficial. It's not. Children enjoy that. We talk about giving stickers. We talk about, you know, when you reward, maybe it might just be a small reward, but the child will recognize that. So when you do this, so you get this. Or when you do this, you don't get this.
Yeah.
So, and also highlighting, you know, the good things in that child and make them feel proud, and they'll want to please you. So you can say a bit of that, a bit more.
Yeah, draw a chart. I always, you know, we use this chart, the word chart for children. Just draw good behaviors and bad behaviors and what they could, they completed a certain task. This is what they will get. It works massively with children. And when a child behaves badly, sit the child up and let, you know, be in that child's level, you know, be on their level and say why you are giving them, you know, rewarding them in a negative way for their bad behavior, and ask them, do you understand why I'm doing this? You know, so those are the things that the parenting resources will teach you. And there are lots of videos out there as well that you can use to learn. I think for us Africans, some of us, we don't explore. It's good to explore, because professionals have put out a lot of resources out there on the YouTube. So Google it, how to manage a child behavior. There are children who have ADHD, and their behavior is so hyperactive that, you know, they destroy things. So it's good to observe that from the onset, how to start managing that before it gets out of hand. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Any other?
I have something to say.
Okay, Doc.
Okay. Thank you, Madonna and Margaret, for the wonderful presentation. I want to say very big thanks for creating time to talk to us. It is highly appreciated. And hopefully we might have another session for you people to give us more talk. I just wanted to add to the last question, answer to the last question. I think the answer provided by Margaret was a good one, but to add to that, especially in very young ones, the positive and negative reinforcement would work, rules and regulations, make sure you stick to it. Couple having one voice rather than one person saying one thing and another person saying another thing, because the kids can be very manipulative. If they say, Mom, can I have this? Mom says no. If they go to dad, the dad says yes, they will know how to manipulate things. But it's always good as well. When they come to you, you will say, okay, did you ask your mom before? If they said yes, then why are you coming to me? What did your mommy say? Then you make sure you stick to it. Even if it is a wrong one, you can call your wife aside and you people have a talk to have one voice. So in that way, you maintain rules in the house. However, in the teenage stage, some people have different personalities, we have different temperaments. There are things that you might try your best is not working. Sometimes it might be some personality factors that might need to be worked on. Sometimes it might just be something going on. When you try to explore and you can't get any answer, it's also good to seek help from professionals like your family doctor who can then guide you, because sometimes kids can be depressed. They display you might not see typical depressed mood or the person saying I'm depressed. It might come in form of outburst of anger or irritability. So if you try, it's not working, you can seek help from professionals. The person can be assessed. There are so many therapies that can be implemented. So that's all I wanted to add to that. And thank you once more for both of you. You've done a great job.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Yeah, I have someone that joined us from Nigeria. He said the solutions that we provided are universal and not just within the British context. And I think he's quite right in saying that. Yeah, it's all over. So, so thank you. So use every aspect of whatever we learned today to adapt it to wherever you are. Parenting is universal. Please use it. And what another thing that we found is when children come from the African context to the UK, they said we've had that so many times where John would say, "Oh, we heard that we have to call the police if mom did this, if dad did this." So they've been asked, they've been told that, but it's always good to have a better understanding of reasons for why children have been asked to call the police. That is, that's part of that safeguarding and child protection area. But a lot of families abuse it as well. So a child who's a peer, I have a young person, how old was she? 15 or thereabouts, very, very wonderful family background. Because the children, the parent, the peers, her friends are in care, and she wanted to go and test the care system. Guess what? She went to care, into care. She alleged that her father shouted at her, and her father was forcing her to pray. Her father was forcing her to do things. Her father was using certain things during their prayer version in the morning about going to hell or something like that. So that was how social services became involved, emotional abuse. And this child's parents, the police went to the home, arrested the father, arrested the mother, confiscated their passports, took her into care. But there was a process anyway, so I'm just giving a nutshell. Took her into care because that allegation was very huge. She had a recorded video of that morning, of that session, shared it. Obviously, social services don't take things like that lightly. And because it was an African, when I got the case, because another thing is about the cultural competence. Maggie, we were talking about that earlier. The British social workers.
As we have a lot of practitioners who do not understand a lot of cultural practices and maybe some beliefs.
Yes.
Or something to do with spiritualism or stuff like that. So there are some cases that can be quite complex to people who do not understand the cultural aspects, or who are not culturally competent in some areas.
Yeah.
And, because some things are very specific and doesn't mean they are wrong, as long as they're not harmful to any child or to anyone.
Yeah.
But it depends on who actually picks up the case and, who assesses and what their beliefs and values are.
Yeah. Okay. So I think we have, I don't know, everybody, I'm sure, I hope that we've given you as much as is there any other question? As much as we're able to. Did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, can I ask a question, please?
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And there's a last statement, the items that either you or Magnet made about somebody, maybe a father, mentioned the child, saying that leveled allegation that is mentioned here during family prayer. I think, is it that one?
Yeah.
Because in this situation, that's why I want to ask if there's a way you, the social worker, you'll be able to discern rightly which area to protect the father instead of the child. Because if a parent did not tell the child exactly what things are, well, I don't think the government will tell the child what the things are, because probably in love, the father is trying a way of telling him, if you don't do this right thing, that this is where you are going to go. Because let us not forget the fact of where we're coming from. Africa, our own pattern of life or way of treating is different from here. First of all, he's not using cane on him or using hand on the child. Rather, he's trying to use the word yes. This is one of the things which you can get if you behave wrongly. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, but what we're saying, brother, Mr. Livinus, what we're saying is sometimes before the case could get to the social workers, the local authority, the police would have waded in because the school had reported and the police had made arrests. So number one, that criminal record has been created. So what if there are ways you can talk to your child about, religion. There are ways you can talk to your family, but mind you, this is the child that wants to go into care. The child had lied against the parents, but later on, withdrew her statement. Yeah. So families, one thing about religion and the system. The British system, of course, understand religion, but what we're saying is that sometimes whoever that gets the case might not have the cultural competence to understand where, the context of this in this kind of situation where an African family is praying, maybe they're shouting like, hey, Lord have mercy, things like that, shouting and screaming. The child might not understand that. We say, oh, daddy, they are screaming while they are praying. And to, in a British, a white, professional practitioner will see that as noise and as abusive toward that child, emotional abuse, because the child does not want to stay in that environment. So so it is then our role as African practitioners to give a clear understanding to parents, to the system. Or sometimes it gets overboard, gets out of hand. So so we need to learn how to also talk within our family setting where the children are. That's what we are saying. Yeah. Okay.
Can I add something to what you just said?
Okay.
Was it Livinus that asked the question?
Yeah.
I think the message here is that we should improve on our communication. Everything stems from the relationship between parents and the kids. If there is good relationship from ab initio, and I don't think any child will just wake up and go and report parents. It's not something that just starts overnight. From when they were born, if that relationship is there, even if the child is worried, the child will still come to you as parents. Daddy, why do we pray this way? It is then your duty to explain to your child. But whereby you always harsh to your kids, you're always using negative words, even telling a child, you go to hell if you don't do this. To me as well, that is wrong. You can say, in our culture, maybe we pray somebody who commits a certain sin, the Bible says the person can go to hell. But not telling the child you go to hell because you're not doing this. Definitely, that's sometimes the word of the power of words. We don't know the extent it can go. So we should try to be cautious of what we say. And again, what Madonna and the friend are trying to say is, at the end of the day, religion is religion. Nobody will send parents to prison because of religious belief. Once it is not harmful, there is no physical or evidence of major abuse on that child. In psychiatry as well, there's what we call culture-bound syndrome. Some people will have possession, praying, speaking in tongues. To some white people, they might consider the person is delusional or psychotic. But if you do an assessment, and if that is general belief by people from that same area, it's not delusion, it's not psychosis. That is culture. The same way religion, you cannot say because a Muslim person or a Christian person or Hindu do certain things, the British government will put you in prison. No, they will respect religion. And the only thing is that before you get to the court to defend yourself, your image, and that stress, nobody wants that. So to avoid it, make sure you relate with your kids well, educate them in a proper way, tell them the context of whatever you're saying. Because kids here in the Western world, they all want to, they are very, very inquisitive. Whatever you say, they will ask you why. So the onus is then on you to explain to them, not threatening you go to hell if you don't come with me to church. If you don't do this, you go to hell. No. So I don't know if my own little answer is helpful. Thank you.
It is very helpful. Thank you from the psychological and psychiatric perspective. So thank you so much for buttressing that. Any other questions so that we can wrap up? I think we've spent.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Hello, Michael.
Yeah, Michael. Yeah. Just to add, I think parents should begin to early exert a measure of authority on their kids. I've looked at British parents who sort of allow insubordination from children as early. Oh, Junior, don't worry, Junior. Stop, Junior. Stop that, Junior. I guess when we begin to exert certain kind of authority over kids early enough, the kids will grow up and know that this parent, my father, my mother, is an authority figure over me. And everything should not be allowed, because the kids will grow up with the mentality that, okay, I can behave anyhow. I did something and my parent did not caution me. They didn't even say anything. And the kids will watch your reaction. So for everything you do, they want to watch your reaction. And if you don't react appropriately, they want to go to the next level. So what I'm saying is parents should, as early as possible, exert authority, enforce it, not in an abusive way, or not physical violence, but assertive. So once you do that, kids will grow up with that, and the community will become a better place for everybody. Thank you. That's just what I want to say.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah. Exerting authority in a subtle, loving, nurturing, and caring way. Yeah. And that also boils down to not using control. Yeah. Thank you. Ben?
Yeah, thank you, Madonna and Margaret. So what I'm trying to say is that there's a cultural and religious conflict between the Nigerian back home and the British society. So for some of us that are coming from Nigeria, all I'm advising is let's try as much as possible to once we are here to try to adopt the British way. It's not as if we are going to completely spare the child and no, spare the rod and spoil the child. No, in as much as we are trying to be Africans, we should understand that this is not Nigeria. You know, telling a child, going back to the hell something, with religion, we have to be very careful. Telling a child, threatening a child with hellfire or whatever is, from my own perspective, there's no even evidence of hellfire. So threatening a child with hellfire is completely out of it. Yeah, so all I'm saying is once we are here, let's try as much as possible to balance the way we bring up our kids. You know, I believe in spoil the rod and spare the child, but just like you said, in a very loving and sensitive manner to avoid all these social service cases and issues.
Yeah.
That's my contribution.
Okay, thank you very much. That's quite right. That is learning the culture where you are. Very recently,
Sorry, Madonna, sorry to distract you, please.
Okay.
The person that asked the question or used the word authority, I will still disagree with that, in the sense that authority kind of is more of dictatorial and kind of way of raising children and domineering in nature. I don't think that would be the best way. And if you raise children in such a manner, they will be afraid of you as parents. So, but the only thing is having clear boundaries in whatever that this is, you're the dad and they are the kids, but not in an authoritative way or exerting authority over them. Show love, show boundaries as parents and kids. These are the rules and sticking to the rules, but not in terms of authority or forceful way. If evidence has shown that kids raised in such authoritarian environments, they turn out to be most difficult people to deal with because they develop such culture, develop such mind, and sometimes it also affects their self-esteem.
Yeah.
So we have to be careful of what we do. What we're trying to say here is trying to, in a compassionate way, exert that boundaries in whatever you're the dad, you're not to bring yourself to their own level, but give that clear distinction between parents and children and give them rules, and they have to follow the rules. So
I think it's about the use of language and how we use that language, how that is applied. So exerting authority, like I said, in a very subtle, loving, and your authority as a parent, you exert it and make sure that the child is not the one that the control is, or because some children have removed their parents' authority, and authorities be given to children, and that is what we see in the care system. The parents no longer have their say over their children because they said the system said. I work with people who said the system said. I said, no, the system is not removing your authority as a parent. Set the boundaries from the beginning and let it be. So I've got this man. That's what is the name here on the screen. It said this man. Sorry. Your hand is up.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you, Madonna. Thank you, Margaret, for the presentation. My question is, first, are there rooms for investigation before social services and police come to one home? And in a case where social services and police shows up in one's doorstep, what do one do without any notice? Are there rooms for you to either reject their invite or coming in? That's one aspect. Now, in the aspect of school, when a child goes to school and comes back, because I've had this issue, my daughter had 3 incidents of falling in school, being pushed by the same person. We went to the school and we reported it. Then the school covered it, we are sorry. And she had an injury on her body. Now, if it's in the home that she goes to the school and they see an injury, it becomes a case. They raise it up. But when it happens in school, what then happens? Because all they did was to apologize and then said it's just a coincidence. I said it's not a coincidence. I want this stopped. I want this looked at. They just apologized and that was it. But in a case where it's coming from the opposite side, it becomes an issue. It is raised up in a way to victimize people. I'll use that word victimize because most times no one is investigating what really happened. All they know is that there was an abuse or there's a mark. I just wanted to address that issue.
Do you want me to go, Madonna?
Yes,
Do you
please
want me to
answer the
answer?
first aspect first, and then yeah.
So I'll answer the first question about social worker and police standing up at your door. So when the social worker and the police stand at the door, we'll mainly be working under Section 47 of the Children's Act, which is a child has either suffered significant harm or is at risk of significant harm. So if something has happened, for example, there's a bruise on a child, then you have whatever is called a strategy meeting, where all the professionals come together and talk about the referral information. So we might have a referral from the school, and they've said this child has an injury, and the way the child has explained it is suspicious. It doesn't look like an accidental injury. If it's a non-accidental injury, then we'll decide we need to work under Section 47, which is inquiries. Yeah, so we are making child protection inquiries. And when we turn up at your door, that is the first step of the child investigation, child abuse inquiries. Yes, sometimes we do those inquiries and then they are not substantiated. Or as a social worker, because I'm the one who's going to undertake those inquiries alongside the police might have a criminal investigation going on alongside my inquiries. Or the police might decide to let the social worker take the lead with the inquiries. So the conclusion might be the explanation you have provided or the child has provided is that is enough, or it doesn't show there's any non-accidental injury. No one harmed the child. But obviously, if there are doubts and we believe that this child has been injured by an adult who is supposed to be caring for them, then we take the matter on to the doctor. So there will be a CP medical, which is a child protection medical. And then all that information will inform our decision. So the doctor might say it's unclear what happened. So if they say that, then that leaves her with no option but to say, it's unclear. We don't know how it happened, but an injury happened. So then we go back to your explanation, what happened. Maybe the child tripped at home and fell. Then we start looking at the safety issues around the hazards around the home and how that can be prevented for future. And it doesn't mean that because the police and the social worker have turned up at your door, it will always end up in, oh, this child cannot stay there. Because this is what I see a lot. Because the police have turned up, it means there's an investigation going on. And like we know, investigations could end up with any outcome. It might be, nobody has had this child, or maybe somebody is hurting this child, or maybe we don't really know. The information hasn't really given us a clear answer of what has happened. So in that case, if there's no clear answer, we are still in doubt. You might have a bit of a longer term social work involvement whereby an assessment is undertaken, is completed, and then maybe there's somebody else supporting you after the assessment, recommendations for some parenting work to be done with you, or maybe some courses you might do, or the parents might do, or some support for the child at school or outside school, different options. Or maybe we might decide there was really nothing to worry us. This case is going to close at this point. So it's all different options. The other question you asked is whether you can turn them away. When we are working under Section 47, you can't turn us away. You can't turn the police away, because then that will lead into an arrest, because you are actually interfering with an investigation. So you might as well just listen to what the police are saying or what the social worker is saying, and then explain, because we listen. People think social workers don't listen. We listen. I know we listen. So we'll hear you out. And then we are also human as well. We know things do happen. Yeah. What was the second question you asked? There was another part of that question.
Yeah, the second one was in terms of school. Hello? Yeah, I said the second one was school.
Are we frozen again?
Hello? Hello?
There was another part of the question you asked at the end.
Okay, the second one was a scenario where my daughter went to school, and within the space of 1 week, 3 times, on 3 occasions, she was pushed down by a student. And in one of those occasions, she she had bruises on her body. So because we noticed it, and then we went to report this. And then they were just telling us, oh, it's just a coincidence. I'm wondering if a child is pushed down 3 times by the same person. I don't think that is a coincidence. I think there's something wrong. There's something going on. So I told them, please look into this. And at the end of the day, it was just, oh, we're sorry, this will not happen, is this, and that was it. But I'm just looking at the aspect where it comes from the home. If a child goes to school with a mark, it is raised as if there was a criminal offense or something is happening. No one is investigating. And the next thing I'm saying, or someone is saying, is you see policemen coming, you see social worker coming. No one is calling the parents at the first inquiry. Is there any first inquiry to call the parents to the school to know why does this child have a mark? Do you understand?
When there's when the incident has happened at school, it's up to the school to deal with that through, if you want to deal with that through their complaint procedure.
Yeah.
But that is not a social worker issue where we can go in and deal with the school's complaints. So the school will have to deal with that complaint from you.
You can also request a meeting with the parents of the child, because I've seen parents situations where the school had invited both parents of those children involved, and they deal with those matters within the school, and that bullying stopped, because that's a classic case of bullying. No one knows where that issue starts. So, by you speaking to your child, investigating, finding out why, whether they had issues previously. And then some people have also agreed to meet outside of the school with the parents. You call the parents of that child and you discuss that if the school is not, but make sure that you go through it in a very official way first. Go through the school, because that incident took place at the school. Don't allow it to kind of stretch further. It will go on to cause your child to withdraw from school because of the fear of being bullied. I've seen a child who had gone on to self-harm and being suicidal because of the abuse from her peers. So you need to deal with it. And when you're dealing with it, when you present yourself, because this is also what we get. Parents, African parents, they go in with this aggressive voice, and the school become very interested in you. You become an interesting case, and they will then turn it around to that your child was the one who is abusive. So please do it in a very calm way. If you need help, there's always the pastoral to go through as well within the school. Go through the head teacher, speak to them directly. And then I know they will deal with it. But it's not a matter of you speaking to the teacher when you're going to drop off your child. Request a meeting. Request a meeting and have a proper conversation. It is affecting your child. I don't want that to continue. It is going to affect her general emotional well-being and physical presentation as well. Right. Okay. Does that help? Has that been helpful?
Yes. Thank you.
All right. So if you need any help, just give me a call and we can talk more on that. Okay. I'm just being mindful of time. This is from 6 o'clock. We're going to wrap it up now. And thank God for our successful first conference. I'll be dealing on other issues. I thank you so much, Margaret, my right-hand lady, well experienced in safeguarding and child protection issues. So thank you. And thank you to the Igbo community in Chelmsford who has given us the opportunity to present this matter at this conference today. So we're so grateful. Dr. Ima is our president, and Ben Bobby is the secretary. Thank you for organizing this as well. We're so grateful. God bless you.
Thank you for the two ladies. Well appreciated.
Thank you.
Okay. And thank you for everyone that attended.
Yes.
I hope we try and disseminate the information, educate our friends as well.
Yes.
From the knowledge we got this evening. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
What's your Twitter? Because we are taking notes. Who is this man?
Who is this man? This man, who are you?
Where's the man?
Oh,
Hello.
sorry.
That's the man.
Madonna Margaret, thank you. Pass your bills through Bobby Ben.
Okay. we chat per hour. We chat per hour.
Thank you. Yeah, I know. Make sure you put VAT. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for those that joined from Nigeria as well. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Yes,
Bye.
everyone. God bless you. Thank you.
Yeah, bye. Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.